Palm oil, a widely used vegetable oil in our food, now is causing thousands of wildlife losing their homes. There are more than 300 football fields of remaining forest being plowed in Southeast of Asia every hour. Deforesting and the production of palm oil result in more than 1,000 orangutans died each year because of the destruction of their habitats, and the number is still increasing. But we normally have no aware of this because manufacturers are not clearly labeled on their product. Most of the times we could see is only the vegetable oil on their labels. We want to stop this. We don't want to see orangutans losing their habitats when we are buying foods for feeding ourselves. We want all manufacturers in Australia to use the palm oil sustainably. Melbourne Zoo is one of the organizations which has devoted themselves to this issue for years. They are holding a campaign online which is called Don't Palm Us Off in order to gather all of us to help make this happen. Emily Dunstan, the Senior Manager of Community Conservation in Melbourne Zoo, she's the one who is leading the team putting this campaign all together since 2009. I luckily got a chance to meet her in the zoo and have her answer a few questions about this campaign. Now let's see what does she want to tell us about it. First thing first, thank you for taking this interview, Emily.
You're very welcome.
Okay, my first question is, why does the use of palm oil so important to the destructing habitats and wildlife more than the others? Why not other oils?
So palm oil is grown in big areas around Southeast Asia, and it's been able to be produced really fast and really cheaply. And so it's now the #1 threat to species like orangutans and Sumatran tigers. When you compare it with other vegetable oils, especially the ones used here in Australia, there's nowhere near the level of deforestation and destruction that we're seeing for those as we're seeing for palm oil.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Can you explain us by definition what the 100% certified sustainable palm oil exactly is, and why is it so important to use it?
So not all palm oil is bad. So 100% certified sustainable palm oil has been made according to a whole lot of criteria that's outlined by the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, and they make sure that they address things like the environmental impact and the effects on wildlife and the people that are involved in that process. So it's always improving, but for us it's the bare minimum that we want people to be using because it's ensuring that they're considering a lot of the impacts of palm oil.
And can you introduce us what is our Don't Palm Us Off campaign about? What is the aim of this campaign?
So the Don't Palm Us Off campaign started in 2009, and we have two goals. We want all the palm oil in Australia that is being used to be sustainably produced with CSPO as the minimum, and also for it to be clearly labelled. And we want this to make sure that the palm oil that we're using is no longer driving deforestation and the loss of wildlife.
Okay. And what's the importance of the labeling as a legislation? How does it work?
So labelling is really important because by providing more information to a consumer, it means that they are able to make more choices. And at the moment, a lot of those choices to avoid the wrong types of palm oil is just not obvious and able to be made by consumers. So consumer pressure is really, really important in this issue, and labelling gives them that mechanism. And we've seen, particularly in Europe, where labelling's come into effect, a huge uptake in certified sustainable palm oil in the 6 months leading into that coming into effect, and we saw a 67% uptake of CSPO in those 6 months. So we know that it works, we know that it's a great mechanism, and it means that it evens the playing field, and it makes those companies that aren't doing the right thing with their palm oil much more obvious to the consumer.
Okay, so what do you think the possible reasons for prevent the government from introducing this legislation?
So for this legislation, some of the big barriers that we see is that certainly what we've been told is that they only want to change labelling on products due to mainly health reasons. And so whilst this for us is an environmental crisis, certainly health is the main argument against labelling and changing that particular label. The other big reason that we get given as a barrier is that it's going to cost a lot of money to these manufacturers and these retailers. However, as we've seen in Europe, we still have companies running very successful businesses, and they haven't fallen over, even though they are labelling palm oil. So the negative impact of that is possibly not as big as what we're hearing. Yeah.
According to the research, there are at least 5 million tons of 100% certified sustainable oil produced each year in the world, and Australia imports approximately 130,000 tons. Is this a good number?
Yeah, it's the best number we've got. So the 130,000 tonnes was something that the WWF put together a couple of years ago. And it's a tricky thing. It's never quite as clear cut because that refers to palm oil in its whole form coming into the country. And palm oil can also be found in lots of cosmetic and personal care products, but it's not labelled as palm oil. What they do is buy a chemical that has originally come from palm oil, but it might have changed in other countries, and so they've bought that particular chemical derivative. So it gets a little bit complicated. So we can say that it's a good starting figure, but it's likely to be much higher. In terms of certified sustainable palm oil that's available, yes, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil puts out those figures annually as to how much is available. And to us, it's clear that there is more than enough CSPO being produced to accommodate Australia's needs, which is the important thing for us.
Thank you. Okay, so the final question. We've been talking about the use of 100% certified palm oil to the government, to the manufacturers, and to the rigorous environmental issue we are confronting with. Now, why is it important to our customers? What is the importance?
Of certified sustainable palm oil? By using certified sustainable palm oil, it means customers are going to be much more confident knowing that the ingredients in that product are no longer driving deforestation, at least not to the levels that we've seen in the last 30 years. So we really want to make sure that all the palm oil in Australia is sustainably produced and is no longer driving the loss of wildlife. And by having that on products and having it really clear, it makes it very obvious and very easy for consumers to influence that market and drive that change.
And more importantly, how could we participate in this campaign and help to make this happen?
The best thing anyone can do right at this minute in Australia is to voice their support for clear labelling. We've seen that it works, we've seen that it drives the uptake of certified sustainable palm oil, and certainly this is the year in which we think we can make it happen. There's 10 ministers who are meeting to discuss this twice during 2016, and we really want to make sure that they know Australians support this and that they want this change to happen. And already we're seeing companies starting to shift and move to more certified supplies, which is a great thing. But labelling is the best thing they can do. They can go to www.zoo.org.au/palm oil and add their name.
Okay, thank you, and that's all for the interview. And thank you again for your time, Emily.
Very welcome, very welcome.
Thank you.